Good evening and welcome to InfoWars Nightly News with me, your host, Paul Joseph Watson, sitting in for Alex Jones on this November 22nd, 2011. Coming up, the latest TSA rape case, Ron Paul gets occupied, and the latest on the situation in Egypt and much more. But to start the broadcast, we've got an exclusive interview with Gary Franchi about some exciting Ron Paul poll results out of Iowa, which show the Texas congressman is not only ahead of Barack Obama, but is also beating his Republican challengers. And those results will not be published until tomorrow, but we've got the exclusive on what the figures are showing right now with Gary Franchi, speaking here with Aaron Dykes.
Thank you, Paul. And now for a detailed look at what that poll shows and what it means, we turn now to Gary Franchi, chairman of RevolutionPAC.com. We know the mainstream media has used tactics all throughout their black book to keep Ron Paul's name out of the headlines, and yet here he is in this poll, a significant contender in Iowa, if not the outright leader. Gary Franchi, please tell us more about what this poll means.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me. We understand what's happening in the country today, so we wanted to get a snapshot of Iowa. We wanted to get a true figure, a true scientific figure of what the presidential race looks like. And the results are in, and we did a survey of about 2,900 Iowa residents. We commissioned the survey through an independent company called TeleResearch Corporation, a highly reputable research polling service. And out of those 2,900 people polled, we got 846 likely Republican caucus goers. Okay, now these are the people that are going to go and attend and cast their vote for their selected candidate. Now, as you know, last week, the Bloomberg poll was the big talk of the town, and it showed a dead heat among the candidates who are running, Paul and Romney and Kane and these guys here. So what we decided to do was we wanted to find out who was going to cross over from the independent and Democratic side and go and vote. We want to see how much influence the candidates had. And what we discovered was the #1 candidate, the candidate that is taking the top. This poll shows that the only candidate that has a crossover is Ron Paul. And he leads by a 4-point margin over Herman Cain. Now, the poll actually had a 3-point margin of error. That 3-point margin of error shows that because Ron is 4 points over, that he is actually in the lead. Now, the breakdown is actually 678 registered Republican caucus attendees and 168 disaffected Democrats and independents. So what this shows is definitively Ron Paul is in first place for Iowa.
Right. For those who don't understand, the margin of error is a standard with these scientific polls. But if you're above that margin of error, that's where you show that you're not in a statistical dead heat, that things are really in a clear trend, especially when you bring in the key, the independents, which is also very important in the mainstream races, obviously.
Oh, without question, because, see, most people give Obama the race in '08 because of the independent vote. What we're starting to see now with this poll is that people are saying that Ron Paul is going to pull in the Democrats, he's going to pull in the independents. He has the crossover appeal. None of the other candidates have that ability, and this poll definitively shows that.
And even when you just talk about the niche Republican group, true diehard Republicans, he's still at a statistical dead heat with Kane and Newt Gingrich, right?
That's correct, yes. It's still, with just the baseline Republican vote, there is still a statistical dead heat. But once you incorporate Democrats and independents, it puts Ron Paul over the top. So with this poll, the Republicans, the leading Republicans, okay, if you want to play the two-party race and you want, we all know the game. But it is a game. It's actually happening. And if the Republicans really have a desire to win, if they want to win this race, then they need to get behind Ron Paul, because he's the only one that could actually take it from Obama, because he can pull in those Democrats and Republicans away from Obama.
And people are tired of all the lies. I think they see through both sides of the spectrum in many cases, and Obama's so full of it, as are the others. Now, the other important thing that other recent polls have shown is that while there may be a close matchup with people like Kaine and Gingrich, they have kind of a fluctuating support. Most of the people who identify they're going to vote for those candidates are not entrenched, whereas a very significant portion of Ron Paul supporters say they have decided for sure who their candidate is. They're dedicated to him. They're showing up no matter what to vote for Ron Paul. The other ones, they're going to see which way the wind blows, perhaps.
Well, the message of liberty is infectious, and it spreads. It does. It spreads like a virus. Once you get bit by the bug of freedom, and you understand Ron Paul's message, it's really hard to turn away from it because your eyes are open to the reality of what's happening. So you almost feel guilty to turn away from it. It's like sort of like pretending that you didn't watch a car crash or something like that. So people, once they get turned on to Ron Paul, they stay turned on to Ron Paul, and then they continue to spread the message. The other candidates don't have that same infectious groove that Ron Paul does. One thing that we did discover, and I really wanted to put this question in the poll, was this is the specific question. We said, next, as a voter, do you have one issue that is a primary factor in deciding for whom you will vote? And economy, jobs, government debt, and bailouts came in at 45%. That is the leading issue in the country today: economy, jobs, government debt, and bailouts. Now, the following question, now another clinching question that really shows what is happening in the country and where the temperature of freedom is. We asked, which of the following do you feel pose the greatest threat to your long-term peace and national security? Please select one of the following. Now, we asked about China, revitalized Russia, North Korea, Iran, and interventionist foreign policy. Interventionist foreign policy came in at 27%. 27%. It came in at second place. So out of all the people, okay, that's not just likely Republican caucus goers. That's of the larger sample size of 2,900. Out of 2,900 people, 27% said that an interventionist foreign policy is the greatest threat to national security. That vindicates and shows that Ron Paul's message of a non-interventionist foreign policy is gaining steam.
Right, and he's obviously been the most credible person on economic issues as well, and obviously that looms very large. And Obama and the other establishment GOP people have been totally discredited when it comes to beating the war drums. Now, I want to get into the activism itself, because your PAC has been putting commercials out there, doing other great work, and this is a great idea. We did this at InfoWars back in the 08 cycle. Maybe we'll get on it here in 2012 as well. People can commission polls. They can do other things to bring attention to this candidate or any issue when the mainstream media is obviously dedicated towards keeping his name out of the papers and so forth. The polls themselves are scientific, and you can simply hire out the crews who know how to do this, but if they don't put Ron Paul's name in the question, he's not going to show up in the statistics, yet here he is leading the pack by 4 points. Newt Gingrich and Herman Cain at 21 and 20% respectively. The other candidates far further down. Mitt Romney only at 15% here in this poll with, what, 5 weeks to go till Iowa, January 3rd?
Yeah, and you want to talk about the activism. The thing about the Revolution PAC, as I spoke to you guys earlier on the show today, is that we have a significant advantage that a traditional presidential campaign has. As you know, presidential campaigns do have a campaign donation limit. We do not. And people can support us at revolutionpac.com. We have in the works the possibility of doing another poll in the future, but our big dream, this is the big dream where we need people to step up to the plate. We have revolutionary internet marketing technology, stuff that has never been seen before, that can be deployed, that can change the entire game. Not just internet marketing or internet advertising technology, but we also have the ability to blanket the states of Iowa with television ads, billboards, bus stops. I mean, everywhere you look, if you give us the contribution, we can make it happen. We can put Ron Paul's name everywhere, and there will be no way that he can be denied. We're going to keep Ron Paul in the frontal lobe of the people in Iowa, of the people of New Hampshire, and we need your support to do that at revolutionpac.com.
Well, there's no doubt that the message is getting out there, but I agree, people don't need to stop. Even if he doesn't get the nomination, he can run in as an independent, or even if he doesn't, we still need to get the message of liberty out there, because what he really represents are those important issues. I think just for reference, they wanted to show the Zogby poll that InfoWars commissioned in 2008. That was an interesting one. It was at a time when Ron Paul really didn't have the kind of recognition name-wise that he now has. Now almost everyone knows who Ron Paul is. At the time, we did a blind bio, as they call it, with, you see, candidate A is a 10-term congressman from a large southern state, goes on to describe them, and Ron Paul did very well in that when it wasn't a name game. At the same time, we had to rewrite questions like Mitt Romney's blind bio because they were openly putting heroics in there and loaded words and buzz terms that cause people to trend towards the manufactured candidates. It's just an interesting study on polling in general. Your final comments, Franchi.
Aaron, what I wanted to point out, I'm glad you discussed the buzzwords in polls. What we did in this poll is we made it totally dry, totally generic, no buzzwords. It's just like, you know, who's your favorable, who's your unfavorable, who's your first choice, who's your second choice, and we left it at that. It's straight statistics, it's straight science, and it shows that Ron Paul is the leading candidate in Iowa, and he has the possibility to take the whole state, and we need your support at Revolution PAC to keep the momentum, to keep the pressure on. revolutionpac.com. Please support us.
Thanks, Gary. And, of course, Iowa has always historically been the place to watch for primary elections. At the same time, they've moved up so many of the other primaries, making them earlier and earlier. It'll be interesting to watch if that affects the influence of an outside candidate like Ron Paul. Traditionally, it would reinforce the support for a big-time candidate, a Romney or Kane, who has the mainstream backing. So we'll see what happens when they move up these primaries. But that's something to look at in another segment at another time. For now, this is Aaron Dykes reporting for InfoWars Nightly News. Back to you, Paul Watson.
Thanks, Aaron. Now, these poll numbers are obviously really exciting for Ron Paul supporters because, as we know, Iowa is the key first battleground state in the whole nomination process. And the results actually tally with an article that I wrote a few days ago, which concerned the Bloomberg News poll, which gave a similar outcome. And not only is Ron Paul stronger in the numbers with this margin of error of 3%, he still overrides that. But his support is more solidified than any other candidate in that state. Ron Paul supporters are the least likely to change their minds, whereas the likes of Kane and Gingrich supporters are. So this all bodes well for Ron Paul being able to build momentum in this key early battleground state, and it will force the establishment media to change tactics. They will be forced to take Ron Paul seriously and give his campaign the kind of coverage it deserves. They won't be able to limit Ron Paul to 89 seconds out of a 90-minute debate as CBS News did last Saturday. So it's a very exciting development, and we've got that exclusive story right now on Infowars.com with more to come tomorrow.